Howdy, and welcome to Soul Brothers. You have found the right channel.
Oh, you so have.
You have found the right podcast. There's no reason to look anywhere else. Certainly you could fill your days with listening to all sorts of things, but this is what you need, and you need it now.
Oh, boy. Wow. I'm a little disturbed by that. I felt a little uncomfortable. I don't even know. I don't know what that was, but I'm like, some defilement. Okay, maybe not. That's a little too far, but you know.
It sounded a little too greasy grace,
a
didn't
little
it?
too greasy grace for me, I think.
Oh, man. So listen, we have spent a lot of episodes on the prophetic. And really, we've geared a lot of that toward visions. In the last episode, we started to shift toward dreams. So I thought that we might spend some time in this episode talking more about dreams. Mm-hmm. I know that, at least in our household, I'm the person who's had more of the I was there's and things that you might so far has fallen into the vision episodes. Alice is the dreamer. Mm-hmm. She is absolutely the dreamer. I've had a total of 3 dreams, period. The odd thing is that 2 are about you, so I don't know what that says. But Alice is the dreamer. And but before, so it will help me as we walk through this to know my own wife better.
Yes,
how's that?
Definitely.
So, and just like we've talked about in past episodes, we realize that right now, a lot more people are having these prophetic experiences and encounters, either visions or the I was there's or the out of bodies or the dreams. They're really gearing up. I know Alice has more now than she ever has. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of people. So, and if I've had one, then we know something's going on.
God is on the move.
He is working.
Aslan is on the move. If Keith is having dreams, so it's on.
So there you go. Hey, everybody. I'm Keith.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're going to talk about dreams.
Dream.
I dream about you.
Dream. Dream, dream, dream.
And there you go.
Dream Weaver. I thought we were going to keep going.
Oh, that's good. I didn't think about that.
All right.
Ooh, dream. All right.
There we go.
And now this whole episode, my mind will be on that tune. So thank you for that.
Sure.
So before we pushed record on this episode,
we had another episode.
Pretty much. Once again, I really thought I had seen it all when I saw the encounter/vision scroll.
Right. Right.
But when we shifted from the vision scroll to the dream journal,
right.
I once again was blown away because Nathan has more of these prophetic encounters than a book could probably hold. So, but it's interesting is he was once again saying, well, that was neat. Well, this one was weird, and I'm like going, good grief. Here's my Post-it note again. But what occurred to me is just kind of reliving some of those is you could probably classify those in certain ways. So I thought that might be what we talk about and how we address those with everybody. At least, not to say this is the definitive description of those and everything's going to fit neatly within these pillars, but perhaps to help listeners have a language to explain or at least understand what's going on. And then after we talk about that, maybe we'll talk a little bit about, okay, what about interpreting dreams and how do you really do that? And do you really need to go purchase a book that tells you what every little thing means? So, yes. Which I've seen, but I don't even know whether to trust them or not. So, all right. So what I have so far and I'm going to throw out a few of the types of dreams, and then perhaps we can break those down and get an example of some of those perhaps that you've had, because I think again it would help people understand, wrap
Yes.
their own heads around their own experiences. Okay. So I have warning dreams. I have directional dreams, impartation dreams, preparatory dreams, revelatory dreams, confirmation dreams that might tell you what's going on in the spirit realm. And then last but not least, hot dog dreams.
Yes.
So maybe we actually start.
Or in Keith's current case, broccoli, cauliflower rice, and chicken dreams.
Yes.
Right.
which is a lovely dream. So let's talk first about hot dog dreams, because that's just the easiest one to tackle.
Yeah.
Nathan, what is a hot dog dream?
Well, hot dog dreams are, so just so everybody knows, obviously not every dream is from the Lord. So every dream you have is not from the Lord. However, that does vary a lot, like from person to person. I find that people that have a real, maybe they're a prophet or have a strong prophetic call, they tend to have most, if not all, of their dreams in some way are God inspired or God related. Like there's some way, one of those categories that you just read off.
Okay.
However, most people's dreams are simply a reflection of a couple of things. So I've done a lot of dream studies. Most of you guys, if you don't recall, my first degree's in psychology, so we had a whole section on dreams. And from a secular point of view, and there's a lot of truth to this, a lot of people's dreams are emotions, feelings, and or facts and experiences that people have during the day. They used to call it brain dumping. So a lot of the things that you kind of take in is like a hot dog dream. Like so for instance, one of the very, very common dreams, you probably had them, I imagine, at some point, where let's say you're going to college and all of a sudden the teacher gets up in front of you and starts giving you a ton of assignments and you're feeling completely overwhelmed and you can't even get the assignments done and you have all this panic and anxiety and you wake up.
Yeah.
That's a very common dream and it just shows you have stress or anxiety in your life. Like that could happen in a million different ways. Like people
I'm late for finals.
Yes. People who
I showed up with no pants at school.
You got it.
Those type
very
of things.
common. Like if you wait tables, for instance, like you'll have a dream where you're waiting tables and you get 50 tables at once. I mean, that you're all overwhelmed. Like these are super common. So this is just your own feelings manifesting in your dream. And so there's, when you begin to go into a little more prophetic. So if it's straight just that, it's just your own feelings or hot dog dreams or your brain dumping excess information that it doesn't need. So those are very, very common. And a lot of people have those. And those aren't from God in the sense that they're prophetic or profound in any way. It's simply you being a human being. Does that make sense? This is just who you are. Like it's part of being a human being. It's part of the way your brain functions, part of the way your body functions. Any more than, actually, if I'd have a good analogous thing to this, I think it would be like this. We can talk about this. So Keith and I went to a birthday party this last weekend. And he saw actually the first time that I've been in front of a group meeting where I was given freedom to minister prophetically, which I hadn't up to this point, at least around here. So I got up there, and let's say, if you're a normal person, you're up there and all of a sudden your elbow might hurt. And your elbow might hurt because you heard it earlier than the day you bumped it into the door walking into the room or something like that. But then you get a feeling in your body of elbow pain, and it's the Lord, and it's the Lord because you don't have any pain, and you recognize that pain is like someone in the room has elbow pain and God wants to heal it, as a for instance. So the same thing is with dreams. Like you'll have dreams that are just simply brain dumping, but then they kind of move sometimes more into being a little bit more revelatory. But just so everyone knows, like a hot dog dream is very common. The kind of ones we mentioned are very common. Being naked, being overwhelmed, running through mud. Have you ever tried to punch somebody and you can barely move your arm? I don't know if you've had these before too. Those are also quite common. A lot of things like that. So those are hot dog dreams, basically.
All right. Well, I always thought they were just caused by indigestion. So that even helped me clear it up.
Yes.
So let's jump into warning dreams. So tell us a little bit about what a warning dream is. I think we can probably deduce what that is, but help us understand it and maybe give an example.
Well, I think it'd be good to talk about, there's two different kinds, just for the sake of being simplistic, there's really kind of two different kinds of warning dreams. There's two different kinds of informational dreams, if you want to sum up anything like that. There's direct and indirect. So, for instance, you remember in scriptures when Herod was going to kill Jesus and all these kids under 2 years old, boys under 2.
Yeah.
Remember what happened? Do you remember that?
Yeah, they had a dream.
Had a dream.
Yeah.
And remember the angel came and told him very clearly, like,
here's what's going to happen.
you need to get out of here.
Start to get on the road.
Right. So that's a very clear kind of warning dream. But a lot of other warning dreams might not be so clear. They might be here's a good for instance. I just told Keith about a dream I had a year and a half ago, maybe, or a year ago or so, where I two guys who I knew had passed on to be with the Lord actually appeared in my dream. One of them, I can use his name. One of them was Dan Ellis. He was a friend of mine, and he was a core member of a church, of my dad's church, who I served as youth pastor for years. In the past, I knew his kids really well. In fact, I was at his daughter's wedding. My dad did his daughter's wedding, so pretty close to this guy. He passed away from cancer about a year before this dream, maybe 2 years before this dream. And he appears in the dream with another guy, and they both kind of take me aside and they say, Nathan, we have to warn you. Basically, they said, we need to warn you about people who are about ready to come after you, and they're going to attack your worth and your calling. They're going to come right at you and attack your worth and your calling. And they said, you need to be very, very careful not to let these people into your heart. So that was a warning dream. Now, it wasn't as clear as like what Joseph got, where you have an angel going like, get out of here. Herod's going to kill you. You need to go to Egypt, or I don't remember where they're supposed to go. Anyway, he said, get out of here, basically. That was very clear. Mm-hmm. Mine was like, okay, I need to be careful of these people, but they didn't say what people, they didn't say when. I just knew that someone or some group or somebody was going to come and
be alert.
Yeah, be alert that your worth and your calling are going to be attacked. But it wasn't like super clear that was the case. And some warning dreams are even less clear.
Okay.
So.
And so I have a question automatically. Do you think that for that example, do you think that the Lord uses people that you know for a reason? Do you think, and I'm going to couple this with a few other questions. You said you knew one of them, or at least you named one of them. Did you know both?
I knew both. I just could not remember, even in the dream. I recognized the other person who had passed, but I didn't know. I couldn't remember his name.
Okay. Do you think that he does that perhaps to build trust? I know these people.
I think it's probably a lot of reasons that he picks different people, but the other aspect that people have to understand is people who are kind of immature in understanding dreams or dream interpretation. Okay. They instantly assume everything is literal or one-to-one. So let's say...
Well, they do that in more than dreams.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's very true. But let's say you have a dream where, let's say... Did you have a teacher that you were like really afraid of growing up, like Miss like Scary Face? I don't know. Like, did you ever have a teacher?
Indeed, I did.
Okay, what was her name?
Miss Craven.
Okay,
second grade.
That's even scary name.
Yeah.
Miss Wes Craven, Nightmare on Keith Street.
So anyway,
okay, so all right, so you had this experience with this woman who was kind of scary.
Yeah.
Well, let's say now you have a dream and Miss Craven appears in your dream. And let's say in your dream, you're walking from a park and you can tell that God is leading you out of this park and actually into the city. So it's like you're going somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And at the edge of the park is Miss Craven. And you're like frozen, right? You're scared. And then you wake up. Well, chances are that the Miss Craven is not actually Miss Craven. Miss Craven would represent to you a fear that you needed to overcome. Okay. So like God is taking you out of one ministry perhaps and into another, or out of one place and into another. And the dream would be like, there's going to be a fear that you have to overcome. And of course, Miss Craven would just be the manifestation or the representation of that fear.
Okay.
So I think all of you listening need to understand that your dreams, you have to really, if they're from God, you really need to kind of ask, like, is this that person actually, or does this person represent something else? And again, it'll be what it means to you. Like, what does it represent to you? Like, what does that person in your mind kind of represent for you?
But praying through, the Holy Spirit should reveal that to you.
Yes.
If you ask, and help you interpret that.
Oh, yes, or go to somebody who's prophetic, because interpreting dreams is more than just grabbing a book, which we can get to this later, of course. Yeah. But it's more than just like, well, I got my book now, so now I know white means good, black means bad. I mean, that kind of a thing. Like it's like God will throw things on you all the time. People are like, well, white means good. Unless it's leprosy. Yeah. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff, stuff like that people think, oh, I got to figure it out now. It's like, no, it doesn't always mean that. It depends on the context, depends on a lot of things. So part of interpreting dreams is a prophetic gift, which is why Daniel, who was a prophet, having that prophetic gift, was able to interpret dreams because he had a prophetic gift in order to do so. So there is some logic, there is some understanding, there is some education where you can learn how to interpret dreams a lot better. But there's also simply the prophetic gift in the intimacy with Jesus that really allows you to go, that is what this dream means.
Wow.
So we can get to that later probably. But.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about warning dreams and hot dog dreams. Let's talk about, I actually love this one. Didn't know this before, an hour ago. Tell me about an impartation dream.
Oh boy. So yeah, impartation dreams, and I've had one of these, so I know this is the case because I've experienced all of these. So, so I'll give you what happened to me in a dream, and this actually has happened to me a couple times. And actually, I'll mention one of my dad's dreams too. That impartation can also mean healing. So one time I had a dream. This is like 2021. I had a dream, and I'd actually been praying. It was funny because like the week before, I was praying to the Lord, and I was worshiping with my guitar. And I played guitar for years, and I was just like, Lord, I don't feel like I'm expressing my love for you well enough, And I always loved the sound of keyboard. I always loved keyboard worship, And I said, Lord, I just want to play keyboard and worship you. It was just kind of a prayer I had, like just sort of randomly, as I was playing my guitar. Like Lord, I just want to play keyboard, but I don't want to actually practice. Like I didn't say that, but I was just kind of like, I just want to be able to worship you. I love you. The guitar is great and all, but I don't feel like I'm really expressing my love. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but that's what I was doing. And so it was like a week later, I had this dream where I'm in my house with my mom and dad, and we're having this conversation. They're on either side of me. And all of a sudden a white door opens, and everything freezes. So my parents both freeze and can't hear anything or see anything. And I was like, what the heck? I'm the only one not frozen, but they're frozen. And in comes my Nana. Well, my Nana's my mom's mom. We called her Nana. She lived with us for like 10 years of my growing up years, or maybe a little bit more than that. She taught school for 50 years. She was a school teacher, and she also taught piano. And so she taught piano for years and years and years. And she also played the organ in church and all that kind of stuff. And she came out, she goes, Nathan, I have a $600,000 inheritance for you. And I was like, wow, sweet. That's a lot of money. That'd be awesome. Yes. Yeah. And so then she just lays hands on me, and I feel this power go through me. I mean, it was hard to describe. It was nothing like I've experienced power going through me many times, but this was like a different flavor. I don't know how to describe it. It just felt different. And then she goes, okay, now you got it. And another door opened, again, another white door. This one had closed, and another white door opened across the room. And she walked through, and right when she closed the door, I woke up. And I woke up with this massive, insatiable desire to play the keyboard. And having tried to play the keyboard, like play worship, like probably 10 or 15 times prior to that, I was not able to do it. I sit down after having this dream, and within minutes, I was able to play chords and begin to worship the Lord. At the end of a week, I was able to play most things and be able to worship the Lord. At the end of 2 weeks, I led worship with keyboard for the church, for Unleashed Church that I was leading at that time. Now, I'd messed around with the keyboard and the piano prior, just screwing around, and was able to play a couple of songs just to entertain youth, but I certainly didn't know how to play like worship or anything. and I was able to sit down and do it. So this is an impartation dream. So where I was actually received a gift and something unlocked in me, and I was able to play the keyboard literally immediately from a visitation from my Nana in a dream. What also I would classify as an impartation dream is healing. Sometimes God will come to you and heal you in a dream. And my dad had one of these encounters where my dad had diverticulitis, and he had to have, like, I can't remember if it was like a foot, I don't know. He had to have a bunch of his colon removed because of it. And so he had the surgery to have it removed and all that. And he had stitches, obviously, on his stomach from where they had gone in and removed his intestine. But I remember the top 2 stitches, the others, all the pain went away, but the top 2 stitches were like this unbearable pain. And my dad was in like 24/7, uncomfortable, couldn't hardly sleep kind of pain. And, we were all praying for him, obviously, to get healed and everything. And one night he goes to bed after, I don't know how long he'd been in pain with these stitches, but it had been some time. And he went to sleep, and in his dream, in came an angel, which he thought was a demon at first. He said it looked like a stormtrooper from Star Wars, but instead of white, it was like multicolored. So he was wearing, he said he saw basically what he thought initially, again, was a demon wearing stormtrooper outfit, but all multicolored, and got on him and straddled my dad, like with his knees on the side, literally like on top of my dad, took his hand and jammed it right into where the 2 stitches that were causing my dad severe pain. And he said he had a shot of blinding pain and was trying to like rebuke it because he thought it was a demon. And then the angel disappeared in the dream, and my dad woke up, and when he woke up, he realized he had no pain whatsoever, was completely healed, and never had pain ever again. So there's, these impartation dreams where you can be healed in a dream, or like in my case, you can receive a gift or a talent that you did not previously have. So that's happened to me once, happened to my dad once. So there are impartation dreams where you can actually get a gift or be healed. Keith's shaking your head.
Man, yet again. All right, so we have an example in a past episode about how you're like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Right.
And then have this whole out-of-body experience
Right.
and totally impacts you.
Yeah.
And then today, we have an example of, play guitar. It'd be kind of neat to play piano without practicing. Bam! Nana comes to town overnight. $600K worth of piano lessons.
Apparently, yes.
In one night.
Yeah.
I once again am a little bit jealous because I too have played guitar since I was 6.
Wow. Yeah.
I actually probably have forgotten more than I can play now.
Right.
And have always wanted to also be able to play. I think I can play 3 chords on piano.
Okay.
And that's it.
Right.
And it wasn't after an Anna dream.
Right.
So, I want to go on record, Lord, is saying it would really be neat.
Yes.
I mean, really neat.
I've found that answered prayer comes not through hours of constant travail and deep, intimate, hardcore fasting and prayer for 10 hours. It actually comes through flippant, non-feeling, totally dumbed down, complacent prayer. Just so everyone knows. Now, of course, I'm kind of joking, but at the same time, like, I have evidence for that.
Man,
so anyway.
I don't, like, I can't even wrap my head around that. That's the greatest gift.
It was totally crazy. I mean, it was not only did I wake up with the ability, I woke up with the insatiable desire. Like, I literally woke up like, I have got to go play the piano right now.
Wow.
Like, it was so weird. Yeah, it was like a compelled almost. Like, I have to do this,
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to change the way I pray and at least throw in an occasional. That'd be neat.
Yeah, just
to see what happens.
Just totally be so nonchalant. It's a weird word, chalantly. Nonchalantly.
Chalant.
That sounds like some girl gets her name. Some girl that lives in the hood. Hey, chalantly. Sorry. Okay. So we need to edit that out. Are we okay?
We're all good in. What about directional? Directional dreams.
Directional, yes. Okay, so there's a lot of these that you have in Scripture. We have this same kind of thing with whether they're warning or direction or telling someone they need to do something. Those are really, really common, and I've gotten a few of these as well. Have you had any of these kind of directional dreams?
Not that I know of.
Well, and once again, they're directional.
Remember, I've only had a few.
Yeah, true.
So.
But once again, we have like the same kind of thing where directional is obvious and where directional is not so obvious. So just so everybody knows, most of them are not as obvious, at least in my case. So I'll give you one where it was a directional dream where I was actually asking the Lord whether we should move here to North Carolina. Actually, at the time, I was just asking if we're supposed to leave Denver.
I love the Colorado version of a Southern accent,
yes,
by the way.
North Carolina. So, anyways,
Took a peel.
I can take anything, put in peel. So, anyways, I was asking the Lord if we were supposed to leave Denver. It was one of those questions I had in my heart a lot, and my main question before the Lord was that, like, I love Jesus. I just want revival. I want the deeper things of God. I want a massive move of the Spirit, and I want to be a part of it. Like, I want to be right at the center of it. And I felt like I was like, Lord, if I stay here, like where I was specifically in Colorado, was I going to experience that? Or if I was not, then I want to leave. That's essentially what I was telling the Lord. I was like, if I get to experience total all-out revival, people being sold out, like absolutely loving Jesus, like a move of your Spirit, and if I can experience that here, like where I am physically, like in the ministry that we're at, kind of deal, then I want to stay. And if I can't, then I want to go wherever you want me to go, is basically what I said. So, like that night, in fact, I asked, it was that night I said, can you please speak to me in a dream about this? Like, it was one of the few times that, by the way, don't nobody hear that, like, every time I ask for this dream, it happens. Like, no, I'm like 1 for 500. So don't think that, but this was that one time. This probably happened like 10 times maybe, but like one time, this is one of those times where I asked the Lord, and that night, sure enough, I have a dream. And it's one of those dreams where I'm picked up and moved, like I can feel it. So I'm kind of picked up and moved, and I come to this house. And in this house is a man named Tom Stipe. If you don't know who Tom Stipe is, the last big, huge revival that ever hit Denver in any significant way was led by him. So he used to have the largest charismatic church in Denver throughout all of the late 80s and the early 90s. It was called the Denver Vineyard. And so the Denver Vineyard obviously was a vineyard church, and revival really hit them. There were 5,000 people, miracles, signs, and wonders, power. I mean, it was really, really powerful. And of course, in my mind, like that represented revival in Denver, was Tom Stipe's Denver Vineyard. Like this was what revival was to me. So in this encounter dream, I go and there's Tom Stipe, but he's hugely overweight. Like I go into this room and Tom Stipe is like 500 pounds. I mean, he is huge, and he's kind of laying in a recliner, and he's just massively overweight. And so, but I look at him and I have this ton of like compassion. I have a ton of compassion and love for him. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I love him so much. And I end up going over and actually laying myself, like I prostrate myself on top of him. Like I literally lay my whole body down. And he just kind of sits there for a second, and I feel the love of God passing through me to him so powerfully that I start weeping. So I'm weeping, literally laying on top of Tom Stipe, who's this pastor, which, by the way, at this point, he had passed away. He had died literally, I think, like a month before I had this dream. And so he's laying there. I'm bawling, I'm crying, and I'm feeling the Father's love. And at one point, I feel a tap on my head, like a pat on my head, and it's Tom. And I was kind of taken aback by this pat, because it was kind of like you'd pat like a naive child, kind of like. And so I kind of look up at him, and he looks down at me, kind of with this like sneer, almost like it was like not a good look on his face. And he goes, "We don't do that anymore." Like just like that, we don't do that anymore. And I was kind of like hurt and shocked. And I sort of got up off of him and was like, and I realized him saying we don't do that anymore was like all the gifts of the Spirit, all the power of God, the miracles, signs, wonders, revival, all that. He's like, we don't do that anymore. And so I kind of got up and was like, gosh, that's weird. And as I looked down, there was a bed that was disheveled. It needed to be made. And I felt like the Lord said, hey, make the bed because the sun is coming. like the Son of God. So I was like, oh gosh, I need to make this bed because the sun is coming. So I go to start making the bed because I realize the sun is on his way. And I'm like kind of hurriedly trying to make the bed. While I'm doing that, Tom Stipe gets up with his massive self. Remember, he's like 500 pounds, comes behind me and falls on me. And like he smashes me into this mattress and I can hardly breathe. I'm like, because he's so big and he's so heavy and I can't get him off me. And I'm trying to shrug him off me. I'm like, like trying to get him off because I can't breathe. And I'm trying to tell him like, I can't breathe, sir. And so finally I go, whoosh. And I was able to push him off. And right when I push him off, I take a deep breath and I wake up. Well, that dream was a directional dream to me because I specifically asked God a question. Now, Tom to me represented revival in Denver. And specifically that I asked the Lord, will it happen where I am if I stay where I am? I'm doing the ministry I'm doing. And Tom said, we don't do that anymore. And it felt very clear to my spirit that the Lord was saying, if you stay here, you won't see it. And then secondarily, you're going to be smothered, right? You won't be able to breathe because it's falling on you. As you're trying to get revival ready, you're actually going to be smothered. And
it would seem by what you envisioned as representing revival itself.
Yes.
Would be smothering you.
Yes, it would be smothering me. And I'm like, if I stay in Denver, So I came out of that dream and I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got to go. Like we have to leave. And the reality is I totally would have. Like where we were, we had a great little church and it was awesome. But just the way it was going, like the Lord was clearly saying nothing more is going to come of this. And if it was weird too, because I felt like the Lord said, it's fine. It'll go on for super long time. And we had like a solid paycheck. We had an awesome house with we were very comfortable. We had a ton of friends, all our bills paid. We were very, very comfortable. Everyone loved us. Like it was awesome, right? We'd have Christmas parties with 100 people would show up at our house. It was great. And Mindy's family's there. All of that. But the Lord was like, you can stay here if you want. But that deeper thing, that all out heaven on earth that you're hungry for, if you stay here, it's not going to happen.
Wow.
And I knew that. So, that was one of the directional dreams that I knew we needed to leave. So one more directional dream, again, from my dad, if you want to hear this one. So again, not clear, not super clear, not an angel saying leave, but a situation that was fairly clear to me once I began to understand what was happening. My dad, when he was going to leave North Idaho and come to Denver, because he felt he was about to be, so the way we got to Denver is that same guy, Tom Stipe, actually invited my dad to be executive pastor at that church. That's how he moved from North Idaho to Denver. So, but before that even happened, Dad was considering Denver as an option, but didn't really know like if it was right or not, if he should stay in North Idaho. And my dad had a dream. And in the dream, an angel gave him a newspaper. Now, 100 million years ago, when people read newspapers, like with Fred Flintstone and stuff like that, when they had Tyrannosaurus pets. So there was also a thing that used to happen in small towns. If you were in a small town and a new pastor came, they would take out a huge article on the new pastor. There's a new pastor in town. It's a big deal. Yeah, it would be in the paper. They'd have his name, his family, all this stuff. And he's into this and that. So it would always do that.
A pillar of the community.
Yeah, exactly. So my dad, when this angel handed him a newspaper, and it was a Denver newspaper. And in the Denver newspaper was an article announcing that my dad was coming to Denver, just like you would in a small town newspaper. Mm-hmm. And that my dad woke up realizing, I think God's telling us that we need to move to Denver, right? Because so again, a directional dream, not super, super clear. Like the angel didn't say, go to Denver, but it was pretty clear, that was supposed to be the case.
Wow. Again, it's, I just want to say thank you, Lord, for the Tom Stipe dream.
Yes.
So,
because that's what got us, one of the main things in the spirit that actually got us to move to North Carolina and put in an appeal. is that dream.
All right. So we have revelatory dreams, which I think are Yeah, that's next because we talked about warning, directional, impartation, preparatory, and now revelatory.
Mm-hmm. Revelatory would be like I have a lot of them on my own, but I also have this from the scriptures. It's when oh gosh, was it Artaxerxes or Ahasuerus, King of Persia, Babylon? Throwing them all out there. Daniel interpreted his dream.
Yeah,
Artaxerxes, Ahasuerus, King of Persia, whatever. Anyway, that guy, when he had dreams, remember he had these revelatory dreams. He would dreamed of the four statues. You remember this, or the statue of the four, and that was revelatory about what was actually happening then and what was coming. And so a lot of dreams are revelatory about maybe what is currently happening and then also what is about to happen. So just like that dream, that
more of predictive dreams, is that
predictive, but also revelatory of your current circumstances. Like they can show you what's actually happening in the spirit realm. Again, I can give that, without using the church name, I could give an example of this from my own life. So there was a church where how do I put it? I guess I'll say I just recently started going, and this particular church, I didn't know anything about it or I'd not had any real relationships with anybody. We had just started going, and in this dream, I was taken in to the church. And I walk into the church and I go into the sanctuary. And on the stage, I see a demon. And the demon is crawling around on stage. And I actually see a banner above this demon. And it says insecurity / need to be seen by man. It literally said that all across the sash. And it was crawling around, like wiping its hands and licking like the microphones and the microphone stands and the instruments and stuff. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be a real problem with some of the people who are going to be on stage, is like insecurity and need to be seen. So then I thought, man, I'm going to have to, I literally am watching this in the dream going, I'm going to have to pray about that. But then I walk out and go into the little foyer area, and I'm about ready to walk out and I feel another demonic presence behind me. And so I turn around and it's a green demon. I remember this thing was like a bright green demon, and it also had a sash, and it said the demon of self-promotion. Like the whole thing, it said the demon of self-promotion. And I turned around, I was so angry with it because I was like, it doesn't belong here in this church. Like, how dare it? And I actually punch it in the face like as hard as I could. And it knocked the thing over. I was like, I punched that sucker, the demon of self-promotion, and it just like boom and went falling over. But that was again a revelatory dream where it was like, okay, I'm seeing things about this church that are actually demonic presences that are at work there. And most of these things, dreams and all these things, are calls to prayer. It's like, okay, we need to intercede. We need to pray. This thing has now been revealed to us, like in the spirit, what's happening. So we need to be aware of it. We need to pray, and we need to, if that manifests self-promotion or insecurity, we need to be like, there's a demonic thing behind this, and we need to rebuke that and make sure that, that person, or if you're working it, to confess it, to be aware of it. It could be an issue. So that's kind of one of the, in my life, I have a number of these revelatory dreams.
So they work very similar to visions that we've talked about. In the fact that they're showing you something that you need to see at a greater depth, not just, I guess, perhaps so you can just know, but also so you can use your authority to work in the situation.
Well, yeah, and usually it shows you what's happening in the spirit realm. Like, I don't know how many dreams where I've been taken to someplace like this church and seen in the spirit. So, like, if you physically went to this church, you might not see anything, but you might feel it and not know really what you're feeling. Well, Keith wouldn't, but Alice would.
Yeah, Alice would. I would just listen to her when she said she felt it.
So you're feeling something, you don't know what it is, but then you have a dream, and the dream's revelatory. So now you have a dream, you're actually in. This has happened to me lots of times where I've like walked into a place and felt something, but I didn't really know what it was. I just felt uneasy. I'm like, something is off here, but I don't know what it is. And then I'll have a dream like that night or a couple nights later or whatever, and I'll actually be in that same place I just was. But in the dream, I'm actually seeing in the spirit, which is what happened with this one. Like, I'd actually walked into this church, felt some weird stuff, and then it was like not even a week later, or 2 weeks later that I ended up having this dream where I was in the exact same place as I was when I felt the weird thing. But now I'm actually seeing in the spirit realm, and I can actually see the demons and I know their names. And so that's obviously a call to prayer and a call to awareness, a revelation of what's actually occurring.
What about deja vu? This is a total tangent.
You mean Dijiva? Dijiva?
He's on the tour circuit now. You can go listen to DJ Vu.
Dijiva. Yes.
But what about that? What about that sense that I have been, and I've had that a number of times. I actually had that recently, where something completely clicked into place, and I completely felt like I have been in this moment before. Is that perhaps a dream that we don't remember? Is that what do you think that is?
Well, the secular world, again, we study this in psychology. So the secular world is like believes, and I think there's some validity to this because I saw all the studies on it, that it's your brain is lapsing a little. So
Okay.
you actually see it, but it doesn't register, and then it registers.
Okay.
So do you understand what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's almost like you see an image, but it doesn't.
Like your consciousness takes a moment to catch up with what's going on.
Correct. Yeah. So your unconscious kind of apprehends it, but then your consciousness apprehends it so that you feel like you've seen it before.
Okay.
Because you have, even if it was just seconds before.
Okay.
So you actually have seen it before. That's why you have the feeling. But there are, and in many instances, I've had this happen. I've talked to lots of people that have had this happen, where you have a dream and then you forget about it, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, you have this massive sense of deja vu. But then oftentimes you'll remember the dream. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I totally remember this dream. In fact, I've had it so intensely where I've had a dream, or I've had that deja vu, and I'll be like, I think I dreamed this before. Because the challenge then, so I'd challenge you to this, Keith, when it happens, try and predict what's going to happen next. Because that to me is sometimes how you know this is a really a dream you had. Because it's like, if I can remember the dream and I'm like, okay, this is what happened next, and then see if that actually is what happens next, or something like that. Because then you're like, whoa.
So here's an example. I'm 16, maybe 17 years old. Every year, some buddies and my parents would take us to Panama City Beach, to the Redneck Riviera.
Redneck Riviera.
There you go.
Okay.
Beautiful white sandy beaches.
I've never heard that phrase before.
Oh yeah, man. These were the days. These were the days where there would be 2-3 miles of people essentially just driving in a circle.
Okay.
Right. And playing music and, just having fun.
Okay.
So I, without going into too great of a detail, met someone walking down the beach in the evening. My friend also was there, and another person. And then suddenly, the people that we met left. They had to go. And these guys jumped out at that point, and there was a confrontation.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Like you got jumped, or they?
Oh yeah, completely got jumped.
Wow.
I think they're called slapjack. It's essentially a piece of metal wrapped in leather.
Okay.
Yeah, totally blindsided.
Now, were these guys like? Do you know if they were affiliated with the people you were talking to, or
They thought they were affiliated with them.
wait, you
Okay.
thought they were? Or
No, let me back up. I'm trying to be cryptic here.
Okay.
All right. So when I was a teenager, we met these girls,
Right.
right?
On the beach, walking down.
No, well, we met them earlier, so we met up with them that evening.
Okay, so you met them
Right.
earlier and you met them,
Yeah.
with them later.
Walked down the beach, innocent, and I don't know, curfew hit, so they have to go in for curfew.
Okay.
Hey, talk to you tomorrow.
Sure.
Right? We're gonna head back to where we're staying, and these guys jump out who think that they are in a relationship with these girls.
Oh, I see.
At least that's how it's presented, right?
Okay,
so we're
so
there
they jump
stealing
out.
their girlfriends,
I
according
see,
to them.
okay.
You see where I'm going with this?
I gotcha.
right? And then so they jump us. I'm going to call you out by name, Michael Stanley. So Michael's with me, and he and I are on the beach, and these guys are, you know how guys are. We just a little bit of smack talk going on here, right? A little bit of bowing out of the chest.
So how many guys are there?
At this point, there are only two. So it's an even match.
Yeah, there's two guys. Right? They're just yelling, these are our girls. What's the problem kind of thing.
And at that point, you know me well enough, and you could probably guess how I was at that age. It was more of a sarcasm off.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
definitely.
So there's absolutely that happening.
Yes.
And the next thing, but things escalated really, really quick.
Okay.
And suddenly, I hear a smack, and I look over, and it's because Mike got punched
from the side. I mean, how close were they to
you?
We
were like next to each other, so Mike gets hit.
But I mean, these guys were
close they're right up on us.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're absolutely faced.
Right
we're
there.
toe to toe, man.
Okay.
And
so you're puffing
but like
chest out.
Yeah,
like
but I'm not.
Gorillas.
I can be honest with you, man. I'm not expecting an actual fight to happen.
Sure.
That's how naive I am. I'm just like, no, man. This is going to be some smack.
Even though you're at the Redneck Riviera.
Oh, absolutely, man.
You should have expected it.
Okay. Exactly. Well, it wasn't spring break, so.
Okay, so you were. Yeah. Okay, I got you.
So Mike gets hit. I turn over to look at Mike, not thinking. I'm like, what was that? And I realize he gets hit. Man, I get blindsided the next moment. Total idiot, not paying attention. I get smacked with this leather thing, and man, I am just everything just goes crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm in the sand.
Okay, so you got your clock.
So
rocked.
I look up, Mike, still love you, but Mike is setting the world's record for sprinting.
For Usain Bolt leaving you there.
Man, that dude is lighting up some sand, man. So these guys take off
after him? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm thinking we drove there in my truck.
Wait, so the two guys run after your friend?
They run after him.
Okay. And you're on the sand still.
And I'm on the sand.
Okay.
So I kind of come to and I go, I drove here. I can't leave my vehicle here.
So you go to your car?
So I start to run the other way to the car.
Okay. The opposite way.
Yeah. Do you know these those like they're tricycle things you ride in the water with?
Yeah.
Well, at night apparently they tie those down with ropes.
Okay.
And I learned really quickly where the term clothesline comes from.
Okay.
Because I'm back in the sand again.
Wait, what happened?
I clothesline myself. I'm running toward my vehicle, and I clothesline myself on this thing, and I'm in the sand hilarious. Like, what's going on? So when I finally opened my eyes,
1-2 punch right there.
It was terrible. Like, this is not a good night.
Gosh.
This was so not what I expected.
Wow.
So now there are 4 guys over me.
Oh my gosh. And you already got clotheslined.
Oh yeah. It is not a good night. And by the way, listen, I'm full disclosure. This is when it was. This is in the era where it was cool to MC Hammer pants.
Oh yeah. So you're talking the 89?
Oh yeah. So everybody's wearing Hammer pants.
Okay.
Like every dude on the beach in this brawl, we look like we're in a dance off because we all got Hammer pants on. So, more or at least Vanilla Ice. So so here's the deja vu moment. When it was the smack talk toe to toe.
Yeah.
There were threats of, we got buddies, man. And they got guns.
Okay.
And they're coming.
Okay.
And, I thought it was just baloney.
Sure.
Then all this stuff goes down. The minute I get clotheslined, right, I see.
I'm just visioning you going like, cartoon.
Oh, it would have been totally hilarious if you'd have been watching from like a condo.
It's so
like,
funny.
What the heck's going on there? Everything comes back into my mind about what's about to happen next. And I wasn't in a real relationship with the Lord, but I knew enough in times to call on him.
Okay.
And I asked for help.
So 4 guys standing over you.
No, this is before the 4 guys. This is actually when I was out.
So this is when you're on the sand.
Yep. Right before I opened up and those 4 guys were there.
Okay.
I had seen in my mind, it had all come back. What was actually going to happen next, right? So my long story short, everything that happened after, I had already witnessed. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had been warned somehow being in that moment before. And the only thing I could ever put together was it was so in that moment, perhaps I would call out for help, which is what I did.
Yeah.
Then I just got the crap beat out of me, which was
By
wonderful.
4 guys?
Oh, yeah, it was great. I was a living piñata there for a while.
Oh, my gosh. How long did that last?
I don't know. It felt like an hour or two.
Yeah.
It was probably like 3 minutes, right?
I mean, were you damaged in any way?
My ego was pretty bad. It was pretty bruised. And then I was better when I eventually found Mike.
You didn't have anything broken?
No, nothing was other than my pride.
Didn't lose any teeth or anything?
No teeth loss, no hair loss, at least not, until years later.
All right.
And the hammer pants still looked good.
All right.
So there you go.
All right. There's an upside to
But
everything.
neon pink and yellow, by the way. So my point is this. I do know there are times where I feel like I have been shown, and usually they're in those situations where it's, at least for me, it felt dire, right?
Yeah.
And I knew what was coming. So I had enough to be able to just simply say, all right, Lord, help me out here.
And Mike Stanley was okay when you found him?
No. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I got to finish this story, right? Everybody wants to know this.
Right, exactly.
So I get back to our condo. We usually stayed at the same place.
So you just got up,
year.
They just walked away after beating the crap out of you?
They were like, oh, he's
roughing
roughing
you up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't mess with our girls.
Right.
Okay. End of story.
Right.
So I go drive back. Oh, and by the way, as I'm walking into the truck, that's when the security guard comes to check. You okay? Yeah, appreciate you, man.
Thank you for showing up.
Thank you so much, Barney.
Yes.
So I get back to our condo. A whole lot of friends over the years that we had met, and they see me walk in looking phenomenal.
Right.
And then, the whole, are you okay?
Yeah.
Happens.
Yeah.
And then the next question, where's Mike?
Where's Mike? Yeah.
We don't know where Mike is. So we go down the beach looking for Mike. Eventually, ultimately, we find these two figures walking together. Mike had found some big dude on the beach.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Mike, I hope you're listening, man. So God bless you. It's taken me this whole time to be able to tell this story publicly. So I scream out, Mike! Mike grabs this guy, throws this massive, it's like me throwing you in front of me, and then takes off the other one. And I'm like, dude, you are 0 for 2 today.
Wow.
But
he doesn't recognize you or something? Or
no, I mean, I don't know what he's thinking.
Maybe he just thinks like they're around him somewhere or something.
Like they're after me.
Yeah.
So who knows? But that was it, man. I love you, Mike.
So you did find Mike eventually after
Mike's good, man.
Right.
Mike's good.
Okay.
Married to an awesome lady. Great family.
Good.
Love you, Mike. God bless you.
All right, then.
So, and that was it. But I do know that a lot of people have those moments.
Yeah.
And it makes sense with my conscious takes a minute to catch up with what my mind is taking in. But I do know in my own life, that being one example, I saw everything I knew what was about to happen. I knew when I opened my eyes, 4 guys were going to be there.
Right.
I knew how they were going to be standing. I knew exactly what was coming next.
Right.
All of it.
Well, and that's interesting too, because now whether you dreamt that before or just had a prophetic inclination or prophetic revelation in the moment. So I don't know if you had the prophetic revelation in the moment.
Okay.
Or you had dreamt that before. But the really interesting thing is the more I've studied like the spirit realm, I've read a lot of different books on people that have different ideas about this. But I do know that like really angels and tend not in really demonic things cannot really act outside of the realm of human will. Unless God has like sovereignly ordained a specific thing that is getting done, whether we have a say in it or not. Which, by the way, the second coming of Christ is one of those things. Like he's going to come back, whether you approve of that or not. But most other things are really subject to human will. So I've read a number of things, and I think this is the case, that when you pray, when you cry out, it all of a sudden gives the angelic realm permission to intervene in your situation.
Okay.
And oftentimes they can't intervene until you cry out. And that's kind of how prayer works sometimes too. Until you actually pray and call upon the name of the Lord, they're not allowed to intervene in your situation. I don't mean to say that's like every time, all the time, but it certainly is some of the time. And so I think either God gave you a prophetic inclination of what was going to happen, or you did dream it before. The whole point was to get you to cry out so that the angels could come and help you. And my belief is you have 4 guys that are going. I've done a lot of ministry with gang members and kids that were jumped in and jumped out and all this kind of stuff, which I'm sure you probably know what that is. But anyway, I'll tell you what, like, if that is all that happened to you, like you were fine, you probably had angelic protection, because you should have had a broken rib, a broken nose, dislocated arm, dislocated shoulders. I mean, I've kids that were jumped in, like, get their sockets cracked. I mean, I've seen all kinds of, they have to get their mouths wired shut because their jaws are broken.
Wow.
And the fact that you didn't get any of that, I think is a strong indication that the Lord, whether through a dream or through a prophetic inclination, had you know what was going on, so you would cry out at the proper time to unleash. Then the angels now have permission to protect you from what probably were demonic forces spurring these guys on, and also protecting you physically, so that you walk away with bumps and bruises and not something that could have been a lot worse.
Wow.
That's my theory.
That's super helpful. So,
Yeah.
So let's talk about, we're almost an hour in, but I think there are a few more things I'd like to touch on, because I think other people would get a benefit from this. So I know you have at least 2 examples of confirmation dreams, or times where multiple people have dreamed the same thing.
Yeah.
Share that with us, at least one of those examples, and tell us what you make of that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, the first example was maybe 2019. We just planted our church. It was a couple months old. And I had this very, very vivid, strong prophetic dream. And even in the dream, I knew it was prophetic. Like, I was sort of aware of what was going on.
Wow, this was a prophetic dream.
Yeah, like it was that strong. And in the dream, I was trying to lead worship. And I was trying to lead worship at my dad's old church. And so, but nothing would work. Like, I couldn't get anything to work. The sound wouldn't work right. And a number of people had shown up, but they were getting sick of waiting for me to figure it out, of getting everything going. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, like they started to leave, and I was kind of feeling bad about it. But then, about 30 or 40, almost all young people and a couple older people walk in, all wearing yellow shirts, like the identical yellow shirts. And they were amazing. I could not get the worship figured out as far as technically. I couldn't get the sound to work. I couldn't get what was supposed to go on. They didn't care. They entered into all out praise God. Like, I mean, it was like they brought the presence. They were worshiping with reckless abandonment. They were just going for it. Like, it was powerful. And I'm going, wow, like, this is amazing. But at the same time, I still wanted to get the music going. So I knew the Holy Spirit tells me, as I'm on stage, Holy Spirit tells me, the problem's in the back. You have to go to the back of the church to be able to fix it. So I'm like, okay. So I walk to the back, and I get about halfway down, and I look over, and now they're all facing forward, all these like 30, 40, whatever they were, in like all these yellow shirts. And I look back, and on the back of their shirt is like a movie screen, like this, like every one of them had a movie screen on their back, and there were words forming on their backs in the movie screen.
Like a teleprompter.
Yeah, kind of. Imagine more of like remember an old projector? If you're about 300 or 400 years old, you remember when projectors were used for worship.
Vis-a-vis markers.
Yes, exactly. In worship, remember they'd always do put it on the overhead projector. It was like it was being projected on their back. It kind of looked like that. And
powerless point.
Yes, exactly. And I realized that their words are forming and they're moving around. And the words were like glorifying to God. It was like holy and sanctified and like glory and stuff like that. And they're all kind of morphing around. And there were different sizes. Like, some of the words were really big and some of them were small. And I realized that it was like I was looking at this going like, God is trying to tell me, like, this word really matters. They're all true. And this word matters less, but it's still true. Like, it was, anyway. So I was watching that. So I kind of was like, wow, that's amazing. So I go back to fix the issue. I go back and I realize the power's unplugged. Like, for the whole thing has no power. And so I was like, I just got to plug this in. So I plug it in. I realize the power goes on, and I turn around and the place is packed. And it is packed full of people who are like all different ages, races, backgrounds, countries. And they are just the power and the presence of God. And the 30 or 40 in the yellow shirts, they never budged. They were just continually worshiping, continually going for it. And I was like, man, this is like crazy powerful. And it was like revival. I knew revival had come. Like, this is what I prayed for. And I wake up. So I'm not really thinking about too much about it, other than I thought it was really awesome. I feel like revival's coming. I'm not sure what all this means. I don't know what the yellow shirts and all this other kind of stuff. I'm kind of confused about it. But I was like, well, okay, whatever. Like 3 hours after I wake up, I get a call from at the time, my vice president of my board, Silly Harmonica. His name's Will LaMonica. I call him Silly Harmon. So Silly Harmonica calls me up. He goes, Nate, I got to tell you this dream, man. I had this dream last night. It was crazy. I was like, okay, tell me about it. He's like, well, I was at this church and you were trying to lead worship, but nothing was working. And then all these people with yellow shirts came in. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, there's these words forming on the back of their shirts. I could see him because I was at the sound booth trying to like get the sound to work. And I'm like, what? So we literally had the exact same dream in the same night. Of course, he sees it from his perspective, which is like he's on the soundboard, which I walked right past him in the dream. I never paid attention to him. Like I knew someone was at the soundboard, but I never looked up to even see who it was. I just walked past it to go plug the power in. I couldn't even see the soundboard. But in his dream, he was in the soundboard and was seeing it from that perspective. So that was powerful. I'm like, Lord, what in the world is going on? Right. Well, do you remember right before the Jesus People movement movie was called? It was called Jesus People. Yeah. Jesus People with Lonnie Frisbee. It just came out in like February of last year.
Jesus Revolution.
Yeah. Jesus Revolution. That's it. Like a year ago. So I'm sitting there going, like, I feel the power of God on this movie. And I've studied the Jesus Revolution or the Jesus People movement probably more than anybody ever. like because I'm so interested in God moving on young people, the power of the Spirit, just the Father's love and seeing a massive revival. So I've read tons of things. I've interviewed people from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Like I studied everything about Lonnie Frisbee. I've read all 3 of his autobiographical books. I mean, everything. So anyway, my buddy calls me, TKO, shout out to TKO. He's a young adult in Colorado. And he goes, dude, I think your dream is coming to pass. I'm like, because I talked about this publicly because I'd had the dream, like Silly Harmonica had the dream. We need to pray, something was going on here. And he sends me this picture of a friend of his in his church. And he goes, look, they're handing out these t-shirts for free to promote the movie. And they were yellow t-shirts, just like I had seen, solid yellow with Jesus Revolution on the back. And he's like, I think this is it. And I looked at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this is it. Like this is something is coming that has to do with young people, a new Jesus People movement, like glory, power, holy. These were the words that were like forming in really big words on the back of their shirts. Like it's something like this. And it's going to be so powerful. And so many people are coming to Christ from all over the world. Now, I haven't seen a manifestation of that, like in the natural. But it felt to me like a confirmation that those dreams really were pointing towards a move of God. And in my dream, specifically, there was no power, which I think is really interesting because because that was a problem. That's why nothing was working, was because there was no power. And I remember, I don't know if, it's just been so weird. I've been to so many meetings since I've been here in North Carolina. And I've been to some meetings where there was some presence. And there was a lot, and I've been to some meetings where there's a lot of emotionalism and a lot of screaming and yelling. But I haven't been to any meetings where there was real power. And now that, I don't mean to say that with any bad thing about anybody. I say that by way of saying I've led a lot of meetings where there was no power. What I'm trying to say is I think that there is coming some kind of restoration of power that's really going to be what is drawing in and winning people to Christ. Like that's what needed to get plugged in. But the on fire people came first. It was like these young people primarily, not just, but they came first and they were already sold out, regardless of what was happening in the room, regardless of whether or not the worship was working. Like they were just going for it. So I feel like there's a big contingent of people who are just completely going to be sold out prior to that actually happening, like the power coming back on, if that makes sense.
And then once there was power, there was revolution, essentially.
Oh, yeah. It was like, I mean, people from all over, and it was such a powerful. There wasn't a service going on. Like, it was just packed, and people were loving each other, worshiping, glorifying God. Like, so much joy. It was like music coming out of the air, even though there was nothing actually being played.
Sounds like the kingdom.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So, what do you? And that's at least one of three that I know of. You've had a recent one.
Had a recent one, yeah.
You've had the crazy game show lady.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've had two other dreams where, if everyone doesn't know, I dreamt another person dreamt the same dream as me in the same night, and then the crazy demon ladies with another person dreamed the same demon as me, a year apart, exactly, almost to the day.
But almost the same exact dream.
Well, the dream was different, but the demon was the same.
Okay,
that was an interesting thing, to have the same demon manifest in two different dreams that looked exactly the same, but they were different dreams.
So what do you make of that? I mean, obviously, if you have the same dream, same night, and by the way, I wonder what would have happened if you would have locked eyes with Silly Harmonica in the dream.
Oh yeah, that would have been weird.
If you would have realized at that moment,
yeah,
we were looking at each other,
Well, it's so weird because I remember walking past the sound booth in the dream, and I remember trying to look at the sound booth in the dream because, nothing was working. And of course, you always blame the guy in the sound booth. You know this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
As a musician, you're like, it's got to be the sound booth.
Yeah, and
so,
you give the look.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's exactly what you do. So I'm sitting up there thinking, well, the first thing I need to do is check the sound booth. But whenever I'd look back at the sound booth, it was just all blurry. Like, I couldn't see anybody in it. It was completely blurry. And then even when I went back, it was like blurred, and I had no inclination at all to look over there. So that's really weird, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
So that was a part of that. I don't know if you want to talk any more about the other two that are that.
I'm more interested in, what do you make of it? I mean, obviously, if you're going to have the same dream in the exact same night, and Silly Harmonica calls you, and you're like, well, that's something.
Yes.
I mean, that's fairly obvious. Mm-hmm. But in the example, in the crazy demon lady, that you have similar dream, same demon, year apart, and some of the details may be the same or different. What do you make of that? I mean, that seems to be, I don't know, I'm not going to say more unusual. They both seem somewhat unusual, perhaps to most of us, but it seems like you would make something of it. Is it because it's getting closer to that time of warning? Is it because, I mean, why would that be the case, and what do you do with that?
I mean, to me, I think that obviously there's a greater credence lent to it. So, like, those kind of dreams, I think you need to pay more attention to.
Even more so than the two happening on the same night.
Well, which I thought that's what you were talking about. Which ones are you referring to? Like the demon ones?
Yeah, because you said that happened a year apart.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So, I mean, that to me, so that kind of a dream, I think definitely, like, something is coming close that needs to happen.
Okay.
Like, so that's giving you a timing thing, which was definitely the case with this particular issue. With this case, that the timing of it was very near, and it needed to happen.
Okay.
What occurred in her dream needed to happen.
And you've already mentioned that you probably need to give more credence to if two people have the same dream.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it just encourages you to either stand more steadfastly on your faith, or to be more anticipatory of something occurring, or
and you believe there's a faith issue there. It's like, well, that was super encouraging, and your faith is kind of built because you're like, oh my gosh, I had the same dream as somebody else in the same night. There's a real significance there. Like, that's weird, and that tells me this is significant and this is going to happen. So it was very encouraging to me because I'm like, this revival is coming.
Yeah. It's for sure not a hot dog dream.
It's for sure not hot. Yeah. There's no way you can have a hot dog dream that's the same as somebody else's hot dog dream on the same night. Like, that's not happening. Like, this is for sure supernatural. And it's for sure from the Lord. I mean, I hear the audible voice of Holy Spirit in the dream. Go back to the back, the problem's in the back. Wow. Just like that. Go back to the back, the problem's in the back. And I think there's significance even to that. Huh. It's like the problem's in the back, like in the hidden places. You know what I mean? Like the problem isn't where with up
not
on stage,
where you're paying your attention to.
where everyone can see.
Yeah.
The problem's actually in the back. Like that's what the problem is. Like it's in the places you can't see. That's where the issues really lie here. You know, and I'm like, everyone's trying to point out what the church is doing wrong and how they don't like this, and we have to do this kind of church instead of that kind of church, and we have to have small groups instead of big groups, or big groups instead of small groups, or medium groups instead of big and small groups, or whatever. And it's like, actually, that isn't the problem. The problem is what's going on in the back, which you're not looking at. I think that's significant.
So let's switch a little bit and talk about interpretation.
Okay.
So now that we kind of know and have some examples of the different types of dreams you might have, and given some language around that, how about interpreting them? How are we to interpret dreams at all? And what's a good place to start? And how, give us some steps, some practical things to at least help us manage through that.
Well, there are a lot of dream interpretation books out there. Some of them are really bad, and some of them are really okay.
Okay.
And
really okay. That's a great.
And I would recommend
promotion.
One of my old family friends who's passed away now. His name's John Paul Jackson from Streams Ministry. He has a lot of information where they've kind of categorized through interviewing lots of different people and stuff like that, and reading the word and everything, to come up with like kind of a general, this probably means this, but we have to think of dream interpretation of art, a science, and a spiritual gift.
Okay.
Right. So it's really those three things. It's an art, a science, and a spiritual gift. The science part, like Streams Ministry can kind of help you with, in terms of the books that they have, saying like, well, a car is probably ministry, and, blue is like revelation, purple is royalty, things like that. So they can kind of help you out with those kinds of things, and some understanding of your own, like as far as like, what does that mean to you? Because it's a lot of times they're subjective. What does it mean to you?
Okay.
So that's one of the things you can do is get Streams Ministry, John Paul Jackson, lots of different books, really good stuff. And it can help. But what I've also found is people put way too much credence into a book like that, and all of a sudden I got the answers because I got the book. And I'll tell you right now, God will just screw all that up. And, he wants you to hear from him. He wants you to dig it up. He doesn't want you to go to a book and look it up.
Yeah.
He wants you to ask him. And I'm not saying you should never go to a book and look at it. Not saying that at all. I'm saying like totally do that as God would lead you. But what I'm saying is he wants you to go to him and be like, Lord, what was that? Like,
so it's more of a prompt to interact with him.
Yes, I think it's a prompt for interaction. It's a prompt for prayer. It's a prompt for intercession. It's a prompt for listening. All of those things. I think it's supposed to excite our spirit to engage. And of course, we don't want to be obsessed with them. I've been in circles where people like John Paul, actually, not that it wasn't his fault at all. He would stand and rebuke this kind of thing. But I've been in circles where people, like, they would carry their dream journals to church and not their Bible. It was like this weird obsession with like dreams, all about dream. Like, no, it's not. It's about the love of God and the Son of God and the simple gospel. It's not all about dreams. So again, like anything, it can get out of balance, and it can get weird, and people can become obsessive. So don't do that. But in the same token, don't just chuck it all. Don't just think, well, it's nothing, because it probably is something. So let's not, at the same time, not get weird about it and obsessive about it. And this is all we're doing. At the same time, don't just disregard it. I think it's an invitation to come before the Lord, to ask him, maybe to search the word. Like I heard the audible voice of the Lord shortly after we moved here, which actually was 2 Bible verses. So I actually woke up to the audible voice of the Lord telling me 2 Bible verses, which still are really obscure and weird. Still like, what the heck is that? So it's weird. It's not like John 3:16 Bible verses. It's not as bad as Leviticus, but it's still up there somewhere. So anyways, this is the kind of thing we need to be careful and cautious. So that's the first thing, is there are books out there. Streams Ministry is probably the best in terms of the science of it, if we're thinking in terms of science. In terms of the art, there's an art of going like knowing yourself and kind of knowing how God speaks to you. Mm-hmm. So there's an art that's, I say art because it's subjective. Science would be objective, right? And so an art is subjective. So that's what I mean by art and science. The subjective part is to know yourself. Like, know how God speaks to you. Know what certain things mean to you. Mm-hmm. And you'll find consistency in some of your dreams about like, well, every time that person manifests, like they they seem to represent this person, like we talked about, Mrs. Craven, like that would represent like fear to you, but you know yourself.
Indeed it did.
Yes, exactly. See Freddy Krueger. So when you see that kind of thing, so you need to know yourself, again, being art. That's the art of it. Then you have the science of it. The third part of it, and in my opinion, probably the most important part, is the spiritual gift of dream interpretation, which I know people are like, well, that's not listed in there. Well, guess what, guys? I believe there's a whole bunch of gifts that aren't listed in there. Like when Paul lists off the spiritual gifts, it's not an exhaustive list. Like his point wasn't to list off, here's every single spiritual gift in the universe. Like that was not what he was doing. He wasn't giving an exhaustive list. He was giving a list that was pertinent to their culture and their context and what he wanted to address at that particular time. It doesn't mean there's no other spiritual gifts at all. And so I think there's a spiritual gift of dream interpretation, which I believe is a prophetic gift. And I say that because I've seen it. I've seen it in operation. I've seen people who have it. And a lot of prophetic...
Joseph had it.
Yes, exactly. Daniel had it. Like this is a prophetic gift of dream interpretation, and they're able to know and understand what people's dreams are. And it doesn't mean you're 100% accurate. You always know. But there's a gift there that you're kind of able to go, I know what that means. Like, so I'm pretty
it makes
good
sense.
at, yeah. And so that's another thing. If you want a dream interpretation, find somebody who is, sold out to Jesus, good, all that stuff, that has a prophetic gift of dream interpretation, and they can help you, typically to understand what that is. They'll be able to give you a lot of insight. Like, again, a lot of really immature, like people in the Lord will have a dream and think everything is one for one. Like it's all that, and someone who has more experience goes, no, like Tom Stipe in my dream wasn't Tom Stipe, right? Yeah. He represented something. And that is so true of so many dreams. And if you don't know what that person represents to you, like a lot of times people have like, well, I had this dream and my pastor was super mean to somebody in the congregation, and it's like, okay, well, what is your pastor to you? Well, their pastor to them might actually be like, represents authority, spiritual authority. And they're afraid of spiritual authority, or any authority in their life has been abusive or whatever. And so they're like, they'll see that, like they'll see the spiritual authority acting in that way. It's not their pastor is their actual pastor. It's their pastor represents spiritual authority. Now, sometimes it might actually be their pastor in the dream and they're seeing it one-to-one, but just to know that's not always the case, and oftentimes isn't the case. Like you have to pray, understand, get some insight about that.
Yeah, and I know that there are times even, and I can imagine this would be the case for a lot of people, where perhaps you're having dreams, you don't know what they really mean. You don't even realize that there's a prophetic side to that, or that perhaps your spirit is tapping into, whatever. The Lord is revealing things to you. But it very much could be the case that is going on. You just don't realize that's what's happening. Like, for example, and I think this is the case for me, please tell me if you see this differently. There was a time in my career where, I can't tell you how terrible it was, and how I just dreaded every moment of every day. It was just brutal. And over time, the person I reported to really started getting to me, like to the point where I would break out in hives.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was bad. And really started to doubt myself in every aspect of my abilities, and it was just rough. But through that time, I started to have dreams at night, and they were almost, even though the situation was different, even though the scenery was different, there was always a constant. I was always George Washington, and I was always on a horse.
Okay.
Like I was headed into battle, and it was the revolution.
Okay.
I mean, it was just a brief moment. Now, I don't know what that meant, but I know that I would wake up more confident about something. Like there's something, I'm more than perhaps what the circumstance says I am. Yeah. Even though I couldn't explain it, I had the feeling. So I even think that there are times where, do you see that differently, by the way?
No, I think so. That's God ministering to you in your dream.
Well, okay. Well, I know I felt better. I mean,
which is like a spiritual healing. And so you get spiritual healing or physical healing, or both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it certainly helped sustain me through that time. And the funny thing is, when my situation changed, I no longer had those dreams.
Wow. Yeah.
Because perhaps I didn't need them
You
anymore.
didn't need them anymore.
So I was reminded of who I was, regardless of the situation. Now the situation's changed. I don't need the reminder anymore because I know.
Yeah.
And so perhaps that's happening to people now. I would just say, whether you think you're prophetic or not, whether you have a dream journal, I don't know. I think you've got a dream encyclopedia. Thing's got like 28 volumes in it. Or whether you're the Post-it note guy like myself, you may be having more than you think you are. You might not realize it or understand it, but I would say embrace it either way.
Yeah.
And
explore it at least. Yeah.
Well, be open to it.
Yeah.
And maybe tonight before you go to sleep, just say, wouldn't it be neat?
Yes.
Because you never know what that prayer is going to lead to.
You really don't. I am way living evidence of that for sure.
So, all right, man, we are almost an hour and a half in.
Holy smokes.
Is there anything about dreams you'd like to tell before we're done?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we covered a lot of ground. But yeah, just know God ministers to you in your dreams, and he loves you in your dreams. All these things are just gifts from the Lord. And if you don't dream at all, like, that's okay too. I know people are like, well, everyone dreams, you just don't remember it. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. But if you don't remember any of your dreams, or you don't have any dreams, that's okay too. But if you want them, just ask. Like, really, just be like, Lord, it'd be great if I could have a dream. That'd be awesome.
So here's perhaps a teaser before we move on.
Uh-oh.
We've talked about visions. We had a lot of episodes on visions. We've had this episode, and we touched on it a little bit in the last episode for dreams, is being all part of that overall prophetic gift.
Yes.
Perhaps in the future, we can talk about hearing from God audibly. You've touched on it here.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've heard him audibly, but I also know I've heard him and that's actually where I have more examples than anything for
Sweet.
Myself.
Okay.
So, but perhaps we talk about that and being able to know when you hear the Lord, and talk about how that ties into what we've already talked about these past few episodes.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. But on the next episode, ladies and gentlemen, bring your swim trunks.
Yes.
We are getting wet. You may be misted, sprinkled, sprayed, or dunked.
Spray, dunker, sprinkle.
We are slapped down in the mikvah as we're getting baptized in the next episode of Soul Brothers. So there you go. Look forward to that. In the meantime, if you would like to, if you'd like to listen to just some awesome stuff, listen to the Unleashed podcast and the Wednesday Word, which comes out on Wednesday most of the time.
Most of the time. I know they were slacked for a while, but I kind of blame my tech people for that.
It's always the people in the sound booth.
It's always people
That's
in the sound
what
booth.
it was.
It's always people in the sound booth. It's their problem every time.
There was no power there on Wednesday. So, but if you would like to reach us, you can do so starting with
unleashedministries.net, and you can go to Ask Me if you want to contact me directly.
Or if you want to give millions of dollars.
Yes, multiple millions.
Don't stop with one.
Yeah, I mean multiple. Actually, just give it to me directly. That'd be Nathan Sanford, P.O. Box. I don't have a P.O. Box, actually.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
Route 62.
Yeah.
Or you can reach out to rocksaltcoaching.com or the Rock Salt Facebook page. And what I'm personally super excited about, I'm not going to speak for you, but I think I probably could. Basileia, School of the Kingdom. Woo. We are launching the very first course here in North Carolina on February 19th, 2024. If you're interested in any of the course offerings that we have, if you would like to attend in person in the North Carolina area, Charlotte area of North Carolina, then go to basileianc.com and you can read all about it. You can register. And if you're wondering if you have to be here right now, yes, you do. but eventually we will have a different way to access that. So you can be virtual, but for right now it's in person, and man, I cannot tell you how excited I am for this. So everybody join in if you can, or at least check that out. But until then, we appreciate your time with us as we appreciate our time with you, and we'll see you next episode.